So, welcome back, everybody. We have a really good presentation and a really good presenter in store for you. We have Jamye Sagan, who, if you know Jamie, you know that she's very involved in technical communication in general and in STC at large. We grieved very much when she won her election and joined the board at STC, and now she's on the committee. She's chairing the Community Affairs Committee, the CAC, because it was conflict of interest, and we have to have Jamie as a sort of as a supportive mentor now, as opposed to she was our treasurer. She's been our co-manager. I think if we had a bus, Jamie would drive the bus, right? She just pretty much worn every hat in the IDL. I first saw this presentation at the MiniConference for Lone Star. No.
Oh, hey, Vicky, can you hold on for a few minutes? I just had a notification on my computer says it's about to restart and it's only going to give me half an hour. All right. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being patient while my computer decided to restart without warning. So Vicky had already introduced me, so I'll go ahead and begin. So I'm here to talk with you a little bit about incorporating cookbook design elements into technical documentation. And as a lover of cookbooks and a lover of food, I wanted to share that share that with y'all because I saw a lot of different elements that I thought, hey, I can incorporate this into my documentation. And here's a little bit about myself. So I work for HEB, a grocery company based out of Texas. And I'm currently a director on the STC board and chair of the CAC, Community Affairs Committee. I belong to the IDL SIG as well as other SIGs and the South Central Texas chapter. I was president before I came on with the board. And I was also heavily involved with the IDL SIG before I joined the board. And so I'm happy to be here today to see all of my peeps and to be here today and to get to know people more. And I love knitting and I love cats. They just don't go well together. All right, so in today's talk, we'll cover a little bit about gathering the ingredients. So we'll learn a little bit about recipes and TechCom, and then preparing the dish. So we'll get to see some recipe elements. And then finally, we'll get to enjoy the meal with a summary and how we can apply elements of cookbooks to the things that we do. So to begin, we'll just look at a basic recipe outline, some other cookbook items, and then answer the question, are recipes considered technical communication? I think you know the answer, but let's find out. So just looking at a recipe, they may appear different depending on what books you have, but a basic recipe has your title, the title of the recipe. It could be something fancy or something plain or something descriptive. Sometimes recipes have an introduction, so maybe a story of how this recipe came about or just something interesting about it. Then you have your list of ingredients, what you need to make the spaghetti, your instructions. So these can appear in different ways. This one happens to have bullets, some may be numbered or what have you, but at least it tells you what you need to do. And then you have other details. So for this particular recipe, they give you dietary information like calories, fat, sodium, cholesterol. And then this one even has a little hint on how to make water boil faster, which I didn't know was possible until I read this. Now, are recipes technical communication? Absolutely, because technical communication explains how to perform a task, and that's exactly what recipes do. They tell you how to make that dish, how to turn that spaghetti, that ground beef, the tomatoes, sauce, and spices into a delicious dish. All right, so now we're going to look at some elements of different recipes in different recipe books because I have quite the collection at home. And so you'll get to see what cookbooks I have. This is just part of it, but seeing all the different elements that can go into designing your own technical communication. So let's look at some aspects of layout. So the first thing I've noticed is that a lot of cookbooks use multiple columns in their documentation, in their writing. Multiple columns make information easier to read and skim because your eyes are looking at shorter lines versus long winding lines. You could also fit more things on the page, fit more content, and you can even be more creative with the content. So you can fit in illustrations neatly without having too much white space. And we'll get to white space in a little bit because that is an important element, but sometimes you don't want awkward white space. And as I mentioned earlier, you have a little bit of flexibility in formatting. So you can add pictures in between text or graphs or what have you. So here's an example. So first of all, you can use columns to separate elements. So in this cookbook, the first column has your ingredients. So for the dough, filling, and so forth. And then you have your instructions in the next column. So that way this is all separated so you can easily see what the ingredients are and then what to do with them. Here's a blended approach on using columns. So here you have the 2-column approach for your ingredients, because otherwise, if you have this in one column, all the ingredients, that's going to take up a lot of real estate on the page, and you'll have all of this white space. And that white space could be used for other purposes. Or if you're making a book, it'll make it into more pages. So having the ingredients in 2 columns helps save some space, but you still have the appropriate white space to separate these elements. So you have the double columns for the ingredients and then single for the instructions. Now, speaking of white space in a document serves many purposes. It helps provide emphasis because that white space kind of serves as a frame around your work. It also helps separate elements so that you can distinctly see, this is this, or this is that. And it also helps reduce page clutter, because if you have a lot of things crammed on a page, it's not easily readable. So white space adds that little visual separation so you can see each of the different elements. So here's an example of white space showing the recipe elements. So on this one, I can already see what I would do differently probably, but I use this as an example to show you're separating out the person's story, because this particular cookbook focused on the author's stories. So this lady who provided this recipe, this white space here kind of showcases her story and her picture. And then of course you have the ingredients and the recipe. So the white space enables you to easily see Mildred's story and her, see what she looks like. And then white space is used here also to separate each step. So in this particular cookbook, when cooking dandelion salad, instead of numbering the steps, the publishers used spaces to separate out the steps. So this first paragraph talks about preparing the dandelion greens, and then the second one is cooking the bacon, and then the last one is adding the balsamic vinegar. So these are all steps. They're all separated because they're talking about different elements, different steps. So that's a little bit about white space. And then it's kind of hard for me to open up the chat, but if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to review them afterwards. That way I want to make sure that I address everyone's concerns and everything.
Yeah, that was me, Jamie. And I wrote Texas because you had a map of Texas on that cheesecake recipe.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was from the HEB 100th anniversary cookbook, and I went and, hey, might as well share it.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to cover another ingredient that you can incorporate in your technical communication: sidebars and note boxes. So these are the items that help you draw attention to important information. That way it's readily visible, you can't miss it, or you shouldn't miss it. It also provides supplemental information. So you still have your main subject, but you can also learn a little extra. And you could also categorize these sidebars and note boxes so that you can see, oh, this is a hint. Oh, this is a quick fact about history. So these sidebars and note boxes can serve different purposes. So let's look at some examples. So in this cookbook, these cookbooks, they use a color contrast to make the note boxes pop. So you're looking at this page and you see a note that's brown with white text. Now, this was more of a side note because it talks about how because pilgrims weren't allowed to do any work on the Sabbath. They prepared everything the night before. So this is just an interesting fact about the recipe. I mean, you didn't need to know that to cook your molasses baked beans, but it's very interesting to know. And sometimes it's nice to know these little facts. And then in this cookbook, they use the Ultimate Southern Living Cookbook uses green boxes because the green provides a nice contrast against the white of the page. It's not the highest contrast, but it's enough contrast for it to be a note. Because again, with that recipe I showed you, you don't essentially need to know how to boil water faster, but it's really cool to know. And it's to help you along. You can still do it the old-fashioned way, but if you cover the pot with the lid, your water's going to boil faster. You can also incorporate eye-catching headings in your side notes. So for example, in the Betty Crocker's Cookbook for Boys and Girls, every time they have this Cook's Corner sidebar, you know that it's something helpful for the kids to know about cooking. So with this particular Cook's Corner note tells you how do you know when the griddle's hot enough to cook your pancakes? Basically, it's when those drops of water dance upon the hot griddle. So again, you can use these sidebars to provide hints and tips, as well as helpful information to help your learners, help your audience understand the information a little bit more. Finally, you can also use distinctive titles for each type of note. So in addition to, say, the Cook's Corner, you can have notes talk about different things. So for example, in the official Downton Abbey cookbook, you have some notes that say recipe notes. So it tells you hints and tips on how to serve it, or, special advice on how to prepare it. And then they also have sidebars with the food for thought. These are like little anecdotes about maybe how the recipe originated. So here we can learn about Melba, the Melba toast, the Melba sauce, who it was actually named after a real person. It wasn't just made up. So you can use the sidebars and notes to help emphasize information. Sidebar images also provide extra emphasis in education. You know the phrase, a picture speaks 1,000 words? Here you go. So you have a single photo of water being poured in soup, adding the egg white. That's showing you how to add the egg white to your soup, so you have that in your hot and sour soup. And then in this illustration, you could talk about threading, how to thread your kebabs, but if you see it, you can instantly see, meat, then the potato, then the onion, then the meat. So you can see that and instantly know this is how you need to do it. Now, some people, if you learn best by reading, you certainly read this: alternately thread beef cubes and vegetable chunks. But this picture illustrates it so much more clearly. It's like you can see it. And even though your meat items may look slightly different, you get the idea. And now let's look at icons. So the use of icons can greatly help in your technical communication by identifying different information categories. Icons to make it quicker to find information, whether it's a warning or a special note. And plus they look good. But be forewarned, just because I say it looks good, don't just put something in just because it looks good. Make sure it has a purpose. Because, technical communication, we want to focus on what's important. So here's an effective use of icons. So in the Dairy Book of British Food, this particular book uses these little icons, the frozen, the little lightning bolt for cooked in the microwave. So whenever you can freeze a dish or microwave it, you'll see these little icons. So for example, if you're making shepherd's pie, which by the way, I've used this recipe for and it's delicious, you can make it in advance and freeze it. And you can microwave your lamb, onion, and bay leaf if you want to. Now, personally, I prefer it, to cook it on the stove, but this icon tells you that you have the option to microwave it if you don't have a stove. So this is very useful in planning your recipe. So let's say you want to cook something, but you don't have a stove. If you see this icon, hey, I can cook this in the microwave. So there you go. So icons can help you plan accordingly and note the important information. And Icons can also be used as attention grabbers. So in the unofficial Lord of the Rings cookbook, you see this icon right here in the corner. You can't miss it. It says attention uses alcohol. You know that that recipe uses alcohol. So if you have people that you're making this for that cannot ingest alcohol, guess what? You won't be able to make it, at least for them. So you may have to find another recipe to make, maybe find some other cheese recipe. But if everyone's okay with ingesting alcohol in the dish, then it's okay. But this is just a warning in case you have those that cannot ingest alcohol. And finally, icons are useful for marking favorites. So in the Betty Crocker Picture Cookbook, whenever you see a star, they're special staff favorites. And so those icons help denote, hey, this is one of the best recipes. Now, of course, they're all good recipes if they're in the cookbook, but these ones are special favorites. And you may also see this on menus at certain restaurants. You'll see the icons that note, staff favorites, or the ones with the green leaf that denote healthy. So icons can help, educate you on what good options are. And this one just happens to be, great option. And speaking of icons, icons can also provide keys to the basics. So, for example, in the same cookbook, and I'll talk about this on another slide, but what this particular cookbook does is that they have a key recipe, a basic recipe for something, and then at the bottom, they'll have alternatives. So you have your key, AKA basic recipe of, say making chiffon cake, regular chiffon cake. But if you want to make maple pecan or chocolate chip, then you see this little key tells you this is the key recipe, and then what to add to it to make the special one. So icons are really important for pointing out information and for your eye to see that it's something important. So here are a few tips for layout before we get to the next section. So use multiple columns for, to make things easier to read. Don't be afraid of using white space to separate your content and reduce clutter on the page. But at the same time, don't use so much that things look lost. Use the different call outs to emphasize important parts and, little factoids. And finally, use icons to indicate different categories of information, whether it's something, an action that can be done or a warning or what have you. So now we're going to get to images. Let me take a quick swig. And this is my favorite section because images make things appealing and it makes things easier to understand. And so we'll see some examples of how this is accomplished in cookbooks. So the first thing we're going to look at with images is focus, because you don't want to just put an image for the sake of having an image. Everything that you do in TechCom has to be done with deliberation. You want to make sure you focus on what you need to focus on by showcasing the element, removing distractions so that you see only the item in action, and all that helps you gain knowledge about that topic. So first of all, you can use an image to showcase an object. Now for this particular picture, this is a recipe of a Yule log, and you'll notice that you have the Yule log, but when you're showcasing it, they use a holly because it goes with the log. It makes it visually appealing and it's relevant to the subject. Now, I mean, if they were to put a disco ball or anything like that, do you think that would be appropriate? No, but the Yule log and all that pretty holly, you showcase an item to make it more visually appealing and to draw more attention to it. So that's one thing you can do to showcase, make it look as good as possible. You can also use simple illustrations to focus on a certain element. So in this, in the Dairy Book of British Food, you use simple drawings to show how to carve a turkey. So instead of showing the entire table and everyone crowded around the table, you're just focusing in on the turkey because that's what's important, not the people about to eat the turkey, but the turkey itself. So you can see how the fork is placed, where the knife is, what the knife is doing, and your end result, those nice slices of turkey meat. You also use focused photos to show one step at a time. So in this cookbook, in the Ultimate Southern Living Cookbook, each photo focuses on that step. So for example, in step 2, it's only showing how to separate the drumstick and thigh and where to cut. It's not showing anything else. It's just focused on that one element. And that way you can see what's being done and you're not distracted by other elements. And so you got your steps, showing what you're doing, what you're about to do, what instruments to use. Like I didn't know about using kitchen or poultry shears, but apparently you use them to help separate the pieces. Makes it a lot easier to cut through all that backbone and stuff. And voila, pieces. So that's the focus, is that one element. Now, images also involve simplicity. Simplicity helps you retain the knowledge and helps illustrate that concept. So we're going to look at some the use of simple shapes and arrows. We'll see how simple images remove distractions and how you can show relationship among many items. That way you have something that may look cluttered at first, but you're going to declutter it. So first of all, you can use basic shapes and arrows when illustrating something. So for example, in this cookbook, the Polska New Polish Cooking, they're showing how to fill a pierogi. I mean, you can easily have a picture of a pierogi, of the pierogi dough and the filling, but the authors chose to use these illustrations. That way they can easily incorporate the instructions. And plus, these simple images still show you the concept of where to place the filling, how to fold it, so you can see easier how it's folded. See how they use the shading, and then that little outline shows you where the filling would be. You could easily visualize that. I mean, even I can go make my pierogi, even my grandma would, but you can do it yourself. And then showing you how to, where the wine glass goes, so you can, cut the shape out, and then pulling the dumpling out. So it's just, so these simple illustrations show you what you need to do. And in fact, what I just told you, I just realized just now that this big gray circle is not the pierogi, it's actually this red dot. So no, actually I'm right. I've just confused myself. The gray is the pierogi, but you catch my drift. So you're just showing the shapes to easily show how to fill it. And then you can also use line drawings to help remove distractions. So in this cookbook, they're showing how to carve a leg of lamb. Now, if you've ever seen a cooked leg of lamb, the outside is usually dark and charred. And so it would be very difficult to see how, where to cut. It'd be hard to see those lines when you cut the leg of lamb. And so the authors use the line drawings, so you still know this is the leg of lamb. But you can see with the drawings where the lines are, so you know how to cut and all these little vertical lines, and then later slicing through at the bottom so you get all those luscious slices. You wouldn't be able to see that with the photograph unless they make the lines white or something, but it's just so much easier to do this little outline drawing. So in your technical communication, when possible, if you need to, use line drawings to just showcase that element. And then finally, when we were talking about showcasing elements, you have this picture right here of all these different appetizers in the Betty Crocker Picture Cookbook. I mean, you could easily do call outs, but they're going to be kind of hard to read on this picture right here. Like trying to label this and then label this, label that all over the picture. That might be a little challenging. So one alternative is to render this image into simple line drawings and then have your key. That way you can easily see, oh, number 1 is this great big platter right here, this round one, plate of canapes, and they'll tell you what page it's on. Ooh, what about this thing right here? What's that thing in that cup right there? Okay, that matches up to, okay, number 10. Ooh, shrimp cocktail. Or, ooh, that drink looks really good right here, this red one with something green coming out of it. Okay, that matches up to number 15, I think. Tomato juice. So these elements, this line drawing helps you easily see what this item is without, without cluttering up the picture here. So images go a long way in illustrating what you need to cover. And so now with images, you want to be accurate. You want to be as accurate as possible so that you can help your learners more easily visualize and comprehend the information, and it helps build trust. And after all, being accurate is what we are as technical communicators. We want to present information as accurately and as clearly as possible. And so I want to show you a few examples of how cookbooks accomplish this. So I look at this cookbook right here for walrus salad. So is this list accurate? I say it is. Look, 2 large red apples, 2 stalks celery, half cup of walnuts out of the shell, and they even show a little walnut to show what it looks like. Oh, a bowl. I'm sure the rabbit doesn't come in a bowl, but it's cute. And it shows everything else, your mayo, and even your grown-up assistant with a knife. So this list is accurate because it shows everything in the right quantities and the right objects. Now, on the other hand, how about this list? Well, for the most part, it is accurate. However, okay, what does the recipe call for? 10 chicken legs. How many chicken legs do we see here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Does that equal to 10? I don't think so. So what they should have done was to show 10 chicken legs instead of 8. Because even though this is a minor detail, we're gonna notice that immediately because we have such eyes for detail. We're gonna think, I think they should have had 10 chicken legs right there. And even looking at this 3/4 cube of butter or margarine, we can kind of tell that looks more like 2/3. But sometimes errors or inaccuracies can help can detract us from the message at hand. We're so focused on, oh, there's 11 chicken legs, that we're forgetting, oh, what is that we're making? Cornflake crusted chicken. So sometimes you want to be as accurate as possible and make sure things are reflected accurately so that people pay attention to the recipe and not to the errors. And so with images, we also want to talk about contrast, the use of light versus dark, making sure things are visible. And if you have to deal with grayscale printouts, for those who deal with printouts, you want to make sure you have enough contrast so that you can see those elements. Because I know in my work, we use a lot of grayscale printouts because, our people work in the pharmacy. Some people are very tech savvy and others need that printed item in their hands. So looking at contrast. So if you need to use grayscale, make sure you use heavy contrast. See these pictures right here of how to make a pastry shell? You can clearly see the person's hand and the crust, folding it, poking little holes in it and pouring the filling and then folding the ends to center. And also I wanted to show this. Oh, let me go back to the page. I pressed the wrong button. I also wanted to show you a really cool example. If you have 5 steps to show and you only have so much real estate on your page, look how they incorporated that all 5 steps. So you have step 1, step 2, step 3 right here, 4 and 5. That way they don't have to make things smaller or use a bigger piece or have a whole bunch of white space. Here's an alternative if you're limited on space and can't fill up that little bit. So just wanted to show you this as a really cool example. I was really intrigued by it and wanted to share it. And I think I've actually used this in a job aid once to do that. And again, showing the accuracy and focus with the contrast helps you note, helps you see your subject at hand. So right here, they're showing cutting out your pretzel dough into, whatever dimensions and showing each step of folding the dough and twisting them, brushing them with the egg, voila. So if you're accurate, if you have good contrast, and if you have good focus, you have a really good end result. And this is what you should have by the time you perform all these steps. Some yummy looking pretzels to go with whatever you serve them with. So just to sum up with images, You want to make sure your images focus only on that desired action or element. So with print screens, showcasing, if you need to show where something is in relation to the entire screen, you can most certainly show that. But if you're only talking about a certain action, just zoom in on just that, box. You can also use outline sketches to show relationships or to quickly identify specific elements. You always want to be accurate. I mean, that's the hallmark of a technical communicator. And then using contrasting colors to make sure things are visible, especially if you're printing out grayscale. And finally, let's look at some content and formatting. And we're actually doing really well on time. I think we may actually be able to get back on track. Or we're maybe just a little bit behind, but in any case, I just want to share with you some content and formatting tips that I've seen from a cookbook that we can apply to our own tech com. So when you're presenting key information, focus on that main point, and then it makes everything easier to skim. And then if possible, you can present alternatives. And this is especially great if there are more than one ways to do things. So you have your main actions and then your alternative actions or what have you. So let me just show you some examples. So this is a good example. In fact, I kind of talked about this earlier of showing your main element, your main steps, and then your alternatives. So for this recipe, you have your basic chiffon cake recipe, and then how to make different flavored chiffon cakes. And so by showing the main item followed by alternatives, this is great for chunking information and finding common threads. So if you have common actions with alternatives, this is a good way of presenting them. And then with bullets and numbering, I'm a big fan of bullets and numbering because it makes it easier to find information and to read it. It makes it easy to organize. Instead of having this one big long list, you have things that are logically separated. And as instructional designers, that's part of our job anyway, is to chunk the information into something that's easily digestible. And bullets and numbering also help show the process of what you need to do. So here, here's an example of how you can bullet facts. So if you want to know more about fondue, each bullet covers a certain aspect of that fondue, like what you can use to dip your fondue in, like bread cubes, apple slices, what have you, what type of cheese to use, what kind of wine to use when you're making your fondue. And I didn't know this, classic fondue has a splash of kirsch, which is cherry brandy, and then hints on what to do to keep your fondue from getting all stringy. So bullets help separate these factoids into different categories. That way it's not all just mixed in, but you can easily see the information about fondue. And then you can also use bold and large numbering to emphasize the steps. Now, I know in earlier examples, we saw some steps that weren't numbered, but they were separated out by space. This cookbook, the Betty Crocker's Cookbook for Boys and Girls, numbers the steps because their audience are probably kids that have probably never made recipes before. So you want to say, this is what you do first. Then you do this, then you do that, and then you do that. So those big numbers show you step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And then speaking of bolding, you can also incorporate bolded text, which is our next recipe. Bolded text helps emphasize information. It helps you skim information quickly, and bolding also helps define steps and sub-steps. How? Let me show you. So bolding helps you skim information. So I'm making a peach pie. Okay, I see these pointers. Okay, ooh, selection, so I'll know how to pick a ripe peach. Ooh, storage, how do I store them? Ooh, where it says storage, go ahead and read. And I'm thinking, okay, I need 2 pounds of peaches. How many peaches is that? Ooh, peach poundage, it tells you. And so bolding helps you locate information quickly. And it also helps define steps and sub-steps. And for this particular cookbook, the Princess Bride Official Cookbook, uses bolding and use of color and italics to define steps and sub-steps. So here in this cookbook, they say to make the noodles, to make the soup, to finish with the toppings, and then they'll provide the details. So like it tells you how to make the noodles, how to make the actual soup, and then more steps, and then Oh, how do I finish off with the toppings? Here's what you do. So bolding and other formatting helps you define these steps and substeps. That way you can kind of skim. That way, if you already know how to make the noodles, just go ahead and do it. But if you don't, you have the instructions right here. And finally, putting important information up front. It helps alert the reader to that information so that you are easily reminded of it, helps set it apart on the page for, again, for easier reading, and ultimately providing important information up front helps you be safe. And this is really good on presenting warnings and cautions and all that. So the first thing to do is don't bury important reminders. Don't just put them on the bottom of the page or just bury it in the text. Provide emphasis to it somehow. So for example, okay, for this crown roast of pork Madeira, oh, overnight preparation required. See, notice how it's, I personally probably would have put it up front, but at least they separate it out from the rest of the recipe. It's bolded, it's on a line of its own, and it's slightly larger fonts. So it warns you. That way you know, oh, I can't just make this for dinner tonight. I'm going to have to do some overnight prep so I can serve it another day. So make sure important reminders are emphasized in some form or fashion. And then warnings, to make warnings distinctive. Follow whatever style is in your style manual, but the important thing is to make that information stand out somehow. So you can use call outs, different colored boxes to do this. So in the Cash and Carter family cookbook, John Carter has his tip when dealing with grease fires, or cautions when you're frying or deep frying. So this is, and so he tells you what to do if your oil happens to catch on fire. So I probably would have added some more warnings, but I just wanted to show this as an example of how to provide emphasis to information. And then you could also use information banners to point out important info. So here, this info banner shows you, oh, how easy or how difficult the recipe is, how much time it'll take to prep, and how much time to bake. So you can see that information right then and there, so you know if you have time to make it or not. But yeah, I've got 2 hours. I can easily make this within that time given. So here's some chef tips for content and formatting. So you want to highlight and present your main action or basic information first, followed by your alternatives. And then if you're presenting sequential steps, use numbers. If it's non-sequential or if it's categorical, use bullets. And then bold for emphasis, and feel free to use color and font styles as well. But the main thing is be consistent. Because if you're consistent, people will automatically associate that particular type of formatting with that particular type of call out or warning. But you also want to make your important information stand out. But I mean, the main thing is, like I said before, be consistent. All right, now here's some bonus ingredients. We're almost done with our dish. So let's stir the pot a little bit more, and let me show you a few things that you can also incorporate. All right, we're all instructional designers. We all love it when we're able to help our users retain information. This cookbook, the Betty Crocker's Cookbook for Boys and Girls, has a little kitchen quiz in there. You can have fill in the blank quizzes, and you can help your learners interact with information. So for here, this was actually my handwriting when I was like 10 years old. So I was, oh, here we go. I hit that button too hard. Okay, so you can incorporate little quizzes or fill in the blanks with your notes. I've seen that in a few courses too. That way you can interact with the information. And also the studies have shown that if you write stuff down, it helps keep it in the brain. So this is a good way to help your learners interact with information. And also tells you like what you already know. Okay, if you already know how to liquefy, if you already know how to knead, maybe you don't need to learn how to do that. But what if you don't know how to shred or roll out? You can look that up. And then you can also include a timetable of knowing what to do when. And this is just a really good example. So in that same cookbook, it gives a timetable of preparing breakfast for your family. So it tells you what the ingredients are, your shopping list, and then your timetable, what you can do the night before, and then gives times. Now, of course, you can always adjust this however you need it. This right here is a simple example. But this is a good idea if you need your learners to follow certain steps beforehand. Give them that timetable so that they know what they need to do so that they do it. We use this a lot for like different rollouts, like program rollouts. We'll tell them what they need to do a week beforehand, 2 days before, 1 day before, night before, day of, 1 week later, and so forth. So having a timetable in your documentation is great for making sure people perform the tasks that they need to perform. And here's another good one of blending images and text and tool lists. So you're showing your ingredients, show a picture of it. Again, be accurate, but this is a great way of showing something that people may not be familiar with. Okay, I don't know what a Phillips screwdriver looks like, so let me show you a picture of one. I'm just using that as an example. Or you're illustrating, okay, that's what, a package of spaghetti noodles. So that, again, these are representations, but they're showing you what the different items are. And this is also really good with equipment. Okay, what does the Bunsen burner look like? What does this look like? You can illustrate it and show a picture so people know what is they're looking for. And so now that I've shown you a few bonuses, let me just give you a quick summary, and then I'll open up the floor to any questions. So in summary, we Cookbooks use layout, images, and content and formatting to showcase information. So in layout, we talked about the use of multiple columns, the use of white space, sidebars, and icons. And then with images, we wanted to focus on focus, keeping things simple and accurate, and then providing contrast if necessary or when necessary. And then finally, for the content itself and how to format it, we showed how to present important information, some tips for bullets and numbering, formatting the text itself, whether it's bolding, italics, or what have you, and then the importance of tagging important information. And this is just a quick list of the cookbooks that I used with my, and see if you see in the little corner, that's my cat Piggy. So he's guarding all the cookbooks that I used when I was cooking up this presentation. And again, this is just part of my cookbook collection, and I just, I'm not the best of cooks, but I love reading about cooking. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and stop my presentation so I can see everyone's, I can see the chat and everything. So, oh, before I do that, here's my contact information. I'm on LinkedIn, SlideShare. I'm not so much on Twitter/X anymore, but I do check it on occasion. And of course, my email address, but I am on LinkedIn and email if you want to reach out.
Well, that's beautiful, Jamie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vicki.
And
let's go ahead and
yeah, we have a couple of minutes for questions, and then we'll be learning from Rachel, who bailed me out on the Pictionary problem. Oh, Rachel's already got her costume on.
I love that, Rachel. That's so cool looking. Is that what's that name of the ghost from Mario?
It is. And then he's also on this shirt too. He's my favorite ghost. So
he's cute.
My God. So does anybody have any questions for Jamie before we have thunderous applause for her?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say it was a great presentation, and I'm right there in that boat with you. I love cookbooks. I have cats, the whole deal. So
thank you.
But
thank you, job. Melanie. Thank you, Melanie.
Now I'm going to look at a cookbook and think of all the things that I didn't look at before. Like I'm going to see all the design elements and be like, oh, this is very, this is very intentional. Like I'll look at a cookbook differently now. So thank you for, I'll appreciate the hard work that goes into that. Just like
when I saw this presentation at the Texas MiniConference, I thought, man, this is something, because it brings something that we know a lot about. We think we know a lot about, and it brings it. Now I can't look at a cookbook the same anymore, right? I'm all like, oh, what have they done? And how have they directed my eye, and how have they ensured current, accurate, complete documentation? I just thought that the presentation was really good. So I asked Jamie to come back. And even though she has a very busy day, today she is joining us. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Vicki. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to have to leave now, but I'll look forward to everyone's presentation recordings. So want to wish you all a really wonderful day and good luck with the rest of the conference.
Thanks, Jamie.